Rappers love to act hard until you learn what their government name actually is. And according to Terrence Howard, that tough guy image falls apart even faster once you see what's happening behind closed doors at certain industry parties. Howard didn't hold back when he spoke about what he witnessed firsthand.
Rappers, they're all so tough until you hear their real name.
Yeah, well, until you see them at a Puffy party.
Oh.
Then they're not tough no more. I'm surprised that the rap game is still alive after, because the masculinity that the rappers are supposed to portray, perform on me, and you get your deal. That was what I heard while I was on Empire.
The masculinity that rappers are supposed to portray, perform on me and you get your deal, he said, describing what he claims he heard while working on Empire. That's not a rumor. That's somebody who was inside the room talking. Then there's Petey Pablo. You remember him? Talented writer, singer, genuine artist. He and Young Buck wrote a track called Hose On, and somewhere around 2011, that song named names. It called out exactly what was going down at those parties, and the industry responded fast. No radio station would touch his music after that.
About some of the people in the business. And Petey Pablo, you remember Petey Pablo?
I know who that is.
Petey Pablo, talented writer, singer. Him and Young Buck wrote a song called Hose On. And in that song, back in about 2011 or 29 or something, because he called out all of the taking place at those parties and those people, he was kicked out of the music business.
He didn't retire. He didn't disappear on his own. He was gone. That's the difference. Howard also revealed that Diddy spent weeks personally inviting him over, pitching him on becoming his acting coach. And Diddy just sat there, barely speaking. Then came the real ask, will you listen to my music? Howard played it. Diddy kept waiting. Then Howard's assistant pulled him aside and said Diddy wanted to hang out the following week. Howard's response was simple. For what?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at it. Then next thing you know, okay, hey, will you help me? I want to hear your music. So I come over there and I play the music. He's sitting there, just looking at it, like waiting.
That answer tells you everything. The music industry can build a star overnight and it can erase one just as fast. Petey Pablo found that out the hard way in the early 2000s. He hit the scene with chart-topping records and a sound so distinct that people were literally spinning their shirts over their heads at shows across the country. Then he spoke the wrong truth and it was over. Howard believes the fall wasn't random. He says Petey Pablo was pushed out by an industry that only rewards silence and compliance. This wasn't a career slump. It was a message to every other artist watching from the sidelines. And Petey Pablo himself has been open about how brutal that crash really was. I've been locked up for 6 years, he said. I was a millionaire. He described sitting on a corner the day he signed his deal, him and his partner Fab, with barely $8 between them, buying 44s of Old English and egg rolls from a corner Chinese spot. It was raining.
I was being locked up for 6 years. I was a millionaire. And that was the craziest thing in the world. Like, I sat on the corner, the day we signed the deal, me and my partner Fab, I remember we had like $7 and like almost $8. And we bought us 2 40s of Old English 800. 2 egg rolls from the little Chinese spot, and it was raining.
They sat outside and cried like babies. Bro, I had done it. I'd done it. That moment, 2 guys in the rain with almost nothing, finally feeling like they made it, makes what came after hit even harder because somebody decided that moment wasn't allowed to last. He was in his 20s, sleeping on someone's couch, washing their dishes, sweeping their floors. Not because he had to, but because that was the only way he knew how to show respect to the people letting him stay. And that hit different for a man who used to be somebody. Before prison, his money was right. He was a big dog on the street. Then 6 years later, he's running errands and scrubbing pots just to survive. That's a brutal kind of humbling. But he didn't complain about it. He leaned into it because the alternative was going backwards. People in New York tried to pull him back in. Old faces, familiar voices. Hey man, we know who you are. We know your brother. Here, take this. He turned every single one of them down. Because if he slipped up even once, everything he'd sacrificed would mean nothing. 6 years. Everyone he loved. A whole life left behind just to chase a dream in a city that didn't owe him anything. New York doesn't play games either. He knew that. A lot of people went up there and never made it back out. That pressure was real every single day. Then comes this wild moment, Petey Pablo about to sign with Death Row. Suge Knight walks through the door with 30 Bloods and Crips. The tension in that room was thick enough to cut. But this guy, he didn't flinch. He called everyone blood and cuz in the same breath, and nobody stepped to him about it. Because he wasn't a gang member, he was a healer. He could move between worlds without taking sides, showing respect to everybody in the room without disrespecting anyone. That's a rare thing, and he knew it. And just like that, the session was done. Petey put somebody's government name in a song, the curtain dropped, everybody filed out, and that was the last time he ever heard from that person. 3 minutes in a booth ended the whole thing. No explanation, no callback, nothing. But that's Petey. You cross a line, it's over. His road to where he ended up wasn't clean or easy, not by a long shot. In the early 1990s, he was doing time for robbery. When he got out, he made a choice to pour everything into music instead. That decision changed his life completely. The turning point came when he linked up with Timbaland. What they made together was Raise Up, and when it dropped in 2001, it hit like a freight train. North Carolina hadn't had a moment like that ever. The song climbed to number 25 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became a flat-out anthem, playing through concerts, stadiums, block parties, everywhere. His debut album, Diary of a Sinner, first entry, pulled in a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Album and went certified gold. That's not a one-hit wonder, that's an artist arriving. What makes the whole thing even wilder? His label didn't even want to put the song out. They told him straight up, nobody knows what North Carolina is. And Petey said, "This is all I'm giving you right now, so work with what you got." They pushed back and asked him to at least drop some city names in the track. He said fine, that compromise helped make the record. But the song itself, that was all him. And when you hear him talk about it now, the pride just pours out of him. Today, when you say North Carolina, everybody wants to raise up. It's an amazing feeling. I'm still humbled because I'm such a hometown country boy. He was later inducted into the Carolina Music Hall of Fame, and in his speech, he kept it simple. All he ever wanted was for a state that never got recognition to finally be recognized. 2 years after Raise Up in 2004, Petey came back with his sophomore album, Still Writing in My Diary, second entry. And this time, he brought something even bigger with him. Freak a Leak took over everything. Clubs, radio, ringtones, you name it. The track shot up to number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100, a full 18 spots higher than his debut single. Suddenly, Petey Pablo was on BET, on MTV, on award show stages, collaborating with names like Ciara and Lil Jon. The kid from North Carolina wasn't just recognized anymore, he was unavoidable. It looked like Petey Pablo was on his way to becoming one of the biggest names in Southern hip-hop. Then, almost overnight, he wasn't. Fans still remember exactly what that music meant to them. One person talked about buying Diary of a Sinner and playing it for his kids, who immediately asked, "Dad, who is this country dude?" He had to explain, "No, that's rap. That's the Carolina Razor. That's the guy who told you to take your shirt off and spin it like a helicopter." That song hit different, but it wasn't just the energy, it was the realness. One fan described listening to the track where Petey talks about being completely broke, scraping change out of an ashtray down to 2 cigarettes, not knowing how he was going to survive. That fan said he still plays it before work every single day because it reminds him where he came from. "This is grace," he said. "God just gave me a lot of grace, man. I really take no credit for where I am today. I work hard, I'm funny, but this life I got, this is crazy." Now here's where things get strange. Despite 2 albums and a fan base that genuinely loved him, Petey Pablo basically vanished after 2004. No more hit records, no major features. While T.I., Young Jeezy, and Ludacris kept rising, Petey faded. So what actually happened? According to Terrence Howard, it wasn't bad music or bad decisions that ended things. It was an accusation. Petey allegedly refused to do what the industry wanted, and somebody claimed he touched a man inappropriately at a bar. Howard's reaction was blunt. "I can't imagine Cuba touching some man. No, a man." That conversation quickly opened up into something bigger. Howard started connecting dots out loud, bringing up the Puffy parties, the allegations swirling around those events, and admitting that even when his own assistant brought it up, he laughed it off. It wasn't until he heard from multiple people who had worked with Puffy directly that he stopped joking. "The last thing I ever thought was going on there was gay stuff," Howard said. "Not that it's wrong, I just did not think that's what Puffy was doing." There's a term that dates back to the era of slavery, and Terrence Howard says what's happening to young artists in the music industry right now mirrors it almost exactly. It was called breaking the buck. If an enslaved boy around 12 years old showed too much confidence, too much fire, the overseers would tie him down and break him publicly. Not just physically, they'd crush the spirit out of him so when he walked among the others, that confidence was gone. Howard says that same dynamic is still playing out, just in a different industry. Think about what it takes to even get to that point. A young rapper coming up from nothing, counted out, ignored, fighting through circumstances most people couldn't survive. And then finally, they channel all of it into music. They get in a room with someone who can change their life, and that person says, yeah, you got talent, but first you need to perform for me. Howard says that's exactly what he was hearing from people around him during his time on Empire. And then there's Petey Pablo. If you remember him, you know the talent was undeniable. Him and Young Buck put together a song called Ho His Own, and around 2011, that song called out what was happening at those industry parties. Name names, went all in, and just like that, Petey Pablo was gone. No radio play, no deals, no visibility. He didn't disappear because he lost his talent. He disappeared because he refused to stay quiet. Howard says Petey questioned the system, pushed back against certain pressures, and went from a rising star to completely shut out almost overnight. That's not a coincidence. That's a warning sent to everyone watching. But here's what Howard also shared, and it says everything about who Petey Pablo actually is. Back in 2005, at an event in Los Angeles, Howard realized he'd left his wallet behind. Petey Pablo walked up and handed him $200. No hesitation, no conditions, no expectation of anything in return. Howard never forgot it. Years later on the set of Empire, when the show needed someone to play an inmate, Howard thought of Petey. He pushed for him to get that role, not out of pity, out of respect for a man who showed him genuine kindness when he didn't have to. That's the kind of loyalty that doesn't get talked about enough in an industry built on using people up and throwing them away. And Howard's own path to Empire, that's a whole story on its own. He says the reason he even landed that role comes down to one thing. Jerry looked at him and said, he was just that guy. So Petey Pablo randomly crosses paths with Terrence Howard at the Four Seasons, and the two of them just click immediately. Howard tells him he'd been listening to his music all the way back during the Hustle and Flow era. Even said he used to try to channel Petey's energy on set. That's not something you forget hearing. But then Howard gets real. He says he's not coming out with the group that night, that he lost his wallet, lost his cards, and he's just heading back up to his room. The wrong moment, and his career never quite got its footing back. Petey doesn't hesitate for a second. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out $200 and hands it to him. No speech, no big moment, just, you're not walking around with nothing here. And then he's gone. 13 years pass, then the phone rings. It's Terrence Howard, out of nowhere. He asks if it's Petey, confirms who he is, and then says something that stops the conversation cold. He says, I owe you money, send me your address. Petey tries to wave it off, tells him forget it, but Howard isn't having it. Send me your address or I'm hanging up and you'll never hear from me again. So Petey gives it to him. 2 days later, a check for $15,000 shows up at his door. When Petey calls him back to talk about it, Howard drops the part that hits the hardest. He admits he never actually lost his wallet that night. He made it up because he was too ashamed to tell the truth about how bad things had gotten for him. And he said that Petey, someone he'd never even had a real conversation with, just a face he recognized from TV, reached into his pocket without blinking. While people Howard had known for years turned their backs on him, a near stranger didn't think twice. That moment hit different for Peter. Hearing that a simple, unplanned act of generosity had literally shifted someone's entire outlook on life, that's the kind of thing that stops you cold. He said the man looked at him and said, now that we've handled that, I need you to help me with this Empire situation. And Peter was in. Terrence Howard wasn't just a contact or a cosign. He was family. When asked about going back to the Empire set, Peter got a little guarded, a little careful with his words. He admitted he was still writing music for the show, but he didn't want to say too much. When I get uneasy feelings about certain situations, sometimes my mouth will put me in situations where I'll be walking around looking like I have lost everything in the world. That's the quote. That's the awareness. He knew his honesty could cost him, but he also couldn't help it. What he was willing to say clearly was this: Terrence Howard is his brother. Full stop. Whatever that man needed, Peter was showing up, no questions asked, with one very specific exception being whatever they were doing on that TV screen that he was not about to touch. That loyalty paid off in a real, visible way. Peter landed a small role on Empire, appearing as an inmate alongside Howard's character Lucius Lyon. He also contributed a track called Snitch to the series, which gave him a brief but genuine moment back in the spotlight. But let's be honest, it wasn't the full comeback people were hoping for. It was Terrence Howard returning a favor to someone he genuinely respected. The exposure didn't reignite the momentum, and the music world had moved on faster than the friendship could fix things. Then came the moment that buried the needle entirely. In 2010, Peter was arrested at Raleigh-Durham International Airport for trying to board a flight with a loaded firearm. He served nearly 3 years in federal prison. To a lot of people watching from the outside, it looked like another self-inflicted wound. But here's where it gets complicated. T.I. did time, Lil Wayne did time, Meek Mill did time. All three came back to massive success, sold-out tours, chart-topping records, and cultural relevance. So why didn't Petey Pablo get that same second win? That question doesn't have a clean answer, and honestly, it's one that still lingers. What Peter did have, though, was an unwavering code. Even in the middle of his own career struggles, he stepped in front of a camera and said something a lot of people in the industry were thinking but wouldn't say out loud. Hip-hop, anybody who got a respect for hip-hop, you listen to me right now. Suge, y'all gotta respect what Suge done did for the game. Regardless of the negativity that the media has portrayed, that man is hip-hop history. You understand what I'm saying? That man was hip-hop history walking, and he moved through the media clean, no drama attached to his name. But the second an outsider stepped in trying to point fingers and pick apart what he did or who he was connected to, people were ready to drop him. Stop doing that to people in this industry. Judge someone on what you saw yourself. Don't let another rapper's opinion reshape your whole view of someone else. You either ride with your person or you don't. If you're a real fan, stay a real fan. And if you're not built for that kind of loyalty, that's fine too, because the ones who are dedicated are going to eat regardless. It's new in the system. Where you at, Remy? Where you at, Jade? Where you at, Jay? It's new in the system. Nobody's out here just shaking their way through videos anymore. We're talking money, networks, real communication. That's the direction things are moving. For Petey Pablo, though, there was no clean rebound. His prison sentence hit at exactly the wrong moment, and his career never quite got its footing back. Some point to the legal trouble itself as the thing that broke his momentum. Others argue the real damage was already done before he ever got arrested, that key industry support had quietly walked away long before the handcuffs came out. Without powerful labels or well-connected insiders in his corner, the charges didn't just slow him down, they turned what should have been a temporary stop into a full stop. A guy who should have had a second chapter never really got to write it. I remember watching Petey Pablo sitting in his car, my brother Big Spider riding passenger, and Petey let me mess with one of his earrings. Rest in peace, Del Dog from Main Street. Because if it wasn't for Del Dog showing up that day, not demanding anything, just politicking, pleading, genuinely begging my brother, none of that moment would have happened. Del Dog had a real interest in Petey Pablo's future, and he needed Petey to feel safe, to feel like the people around him had his back. So Del Dog put his pride down and pleaded with my brother to give Petey that pass. And it was not an easy pass to get. But I watched Petey just sit there calm, let someone unscrew his earring right in front of him, and didn't flinch. Not once. Am I lying? That was Petey Pablo, man. Then Suge's name starts coming up and suddenly the story gets murky. Was Petey Pablo actually signed to death row at some point, or was a deal on the table? Here's the thing with Suge. Whatever was happening, it had nothing to do with Petey Pablo directly. It started with a simple question. Petey Pablo walked up to Suge and asked straight up, is it cool for me to move how I move when we're around each other? No drama, no pressure, just respect. And that question alone told Suge everything he needed to know about the man. Nobody had specifically put Suge on to watch out for Petey Pablo or anything like that. But when Petey came to him like that, Suge read it clearly. It was a mutual understanding, a quiet acknowledgement between two people who knew how the streets worked. Suge essentially gave him the green light and said, I see you, just keep it clean, don't cross nobody, don't make it messy. Petey wasn't robbing anyone. He wasn't mixed up in anything that would complicate things. He was just making sure Suge knew his character, and more importantly, that Suge wouldn't misread his energy if things ever got tense. That kind of communication, quiet and direct, that's how real respect actually works. Suge wasn't about to let Petey sit there and feel like nobody had his back either. If something went sideways with those earrings, Suge was still going to hold his position. He might have even negotiated a few coins, tried to get Petey his jewelry back through the right channels. That's the level of understanding they had between them. So Petey Pablo just sat there, calm, comfortable, handing over the earrings without a scene. That's the full picture. And now that name keeps coming up in a much bigger conversation. Terrence Howard has talked openly about what he calls the darker machinery behind Hollywood and the music industry. He's not the only one raising those kinds of questions. Jaguar Wright, Orlando Brown, Kanye West, they've all pointed fingers at powerful forces they say operate behind closed doors in entertainment. Howard's position is that real success in that world often comes with serious pressure to walk away from who you are. Whether any of those claims hold up is something people are still debating, but the conversations they sparked haven't slowed down. And when fans look back at artists like Petey Pablo, someone who felt like a rocket headed straight to the top, the questions start piling up fast. Why did careers that unstoppable suddenly go quiet? From rappers connected to Diddy, Jay-Z, and Birdman, promising runs faded without much explanation, and fans are still asking why. There's an interview out there with Math Hoffa where this gets broken down even further. Math kept pushing for names, kept trying to get specific, but the answer was clear. I don't want to put brothers' lives up like that. The names weren't the point. The point was this: the music business is ran by the devil. The music business is only designed to get as many people to go away from God as possible. That's a heavy statement, and it's one that a lot of people in that world seem to believe. The devil doesn't just want souls. He wants influencers, people with reach who can quietly pull others away from the light without them ever realizing what's happening. That was the world being described here. A tight crew, all black, all embraced like family. Nobody in that circle ever expected to be performing for massive mixed crowds until the music hit #1. Suddenly, the venues changed, the audiences exploded, and stadiums replaced small clubs. In rap, that crossover just wasn't happening like that before. Take Shine as a perfect example. The Bias-born rapper was being built up as Bad Boy Records' next major star in the late 1990s, a platinum debut album, growing buzz, real momentum. Then came the 1999 nightclub shooting involving Diddy and Jennifer Lopez, and everything collapsed. Shine was convicted and served nearly 10 years in prison. By the time he got out, the industry had moved on completely. His career never recovered. But the real question that's haunted people for years is whether Shine actually carried someone else's consequences. Some believe he took the fall to protect far more powerful people, and the testimony that surfaced didn't exactly quiet those suspicions. When we were on our way to court, I knew that they were setting Shine up to take the fall. When Sean decided to get his own lawyers, I knew that they was going to set Shine up to take the fall. That's a direct accusation from someone who was there, and it raises something darker about how power actually works in the music industry. Then there's G-Dep, another former bad boy artist who had everything lined up. In the early 2000s, Special Delivery made him a standout name in hip-hop. But years later, he shocked the entire industry by voluntarily confessing to a fatal shooting from 1993 that had gone cold and unsolved. He was sentenced to prison, and his career ended right there. His story left fans with the same haunting question. Why did so many artists connected to Bad Boy watch their careers implode while Diddy stayed untouchable at the center of it all? Then comes the interview moment nobody expected. G-Dep, sitting there, was asked directly how he felt about Diddy's legal situation, the raids, the trafficking allegations, all of it. Well, I mean, I feel like, whatever's going on, he's going to handle it however, whatever happens, whatever transpires. I mean, I don't know what happened. I don't even know what's going on. Guarded, careful. Almost like someone choosing every single word with extreme precision. After everything that happened, after the silence while he was locked up, that response speaks volumes without actually saying anything at all. And that's where he stood, fully aware of what he'd been through and what it had cost him. He said he hoped his brother could find a way through it, whatever was really going on behind the scenes. Look, it's easy to point the finger at Diddy because people always point the finger at Diddy. But he respected anyone willing to stand up and say, yeah, I did that. That was me. He wasn't buying the victim narrative, though. Not fully. He kept coming back to one thing. You have to look at what's actually happening, not the story you're telling yourself, not the comfortable version. At some point in his life, something shifted. He couldn't even say exactly when it happened, but truth started to matter to him in a way it hadn't before. Genuineness, realness, being straight with yourself. That stuff started bleeding into everything else he did. And then he hit you with the gut punch. Why do you think you got dropped? Think about it. Be honest. Don't dress it up. Don't make it pretty. If you're sitting there blaming everyone else, you're only lying to yourself. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't care how uncomfortable it makes you. It just sits there waiting until you're ready to face it. And the people who face it, really face it, those are the ones who actually grow. That was the energy he carried out of this conversation. And honestly, it's the energy we all need to carry. Drop a comment below and tell us what you think. Did he get it right? We want to hear from you. Catch you in the next one.